I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Daniel Minahan, the director of Halston on Netflix. And Dan, this really was a passion project for you. So what was it about Halston that made it a passion project for you?
I think growing up, Halston was a big off-screen figure for me. I was fascinated by New York in the 70s. And the more I learned about that world and the more I learned about Halston, the more important I thought his story was. A book came out about 20 years ago that charted his remarkable career and his downfall. And the thing that struck me about it is this idea that this man created this name, he created an empire, and then he had it stripped away from him, his name and his identity. And I thought there was something very cinematic and worthy about telling that story.
He's such a fascinating figure, and I think people are so familiar with the name and not the person. And so, what is it about him that was the most surprising thing for you to discover once you started digging into it?
Well, the thing that I love about the character of Halston is his intense and beautiful creation. He was a world creator. You know, he created everything from, the hats when he was a milliner to incredible garments that were minimalist and architectural feats. And all of the interiors that you see in the show are based on Halston interiors that he designed. He was sort of a world creator, and that was really exciting to dig deep into that and go after those details. And I thought the show would sort of live and die by how authentic we were, because we're making a story about, a creative genius who gets his ability to create taken away from him. So that was the thing that was the most resonant for me or surprising for me.
He was also, it's so interesting. He has this kind of loyal, devoted relationships around him, but he also, in many ways, kind of, self-sabotages him. He get with his temper and with the drug use, and so I love one of the things about this series is that it really does portray him warts and all, and is not just like this, hagiography of him. Why was that really important for you to get to?
I think it was important to show all sides of him. I think, it's very rare that you get to see a show that's about creativity and artistic creativity. And I think, every aspect of him helped to inform, who he was and what he did. And he led a remarkable life. He led like an exemplary life. He just sort of lost the thread at a certain point.
There's also, I think, one of the things that really kind of struck me in watching it was this idea of this kind of corporate look at how corporate machinations can take over somebody's artistic freedom in terms of like, and I was thinking about how, like, things get mass produced now at Walmart and Amazon, and it seems like some of those corporative threads seem to continue. It's almost like that was like one of the first examples of somebody's brand name being lost to a corporation.
Yeah, it was a bit of he was a bit of a lightning rod in that regard. And I do remember in that time, I've lived in New York for a long time, and I remember a lot of creatives being really struck by that story when he lost the rights to his name. It was very shocking, the idea that you could separate a person from the trademark that they created. So, I think there's something universal about it in that it's about compromise, and how much this person was willing to compromise to get what he wanted. And I think we can all relate to that.
What do you think it was that drove him? What did you get a sense of what you think it is that he ultimately wanted?
I think it's an aspirational story. I think the Halston character, everything from is a creation, and everything from the way he dressed and his appearance to the way he spoke was aspirational. I think he wanted to be as well respected and well regarded and as wealthy as the clients that he served. And I think that's interesting. You know, I think it's also a little bit of what brought him down.
And of course, at the center of this is Ewan McGregor, and he was your first choice for this, was he not?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we didn't really consider anyone else for this except Ewan.
Why was it? What was it about Ewan that drew you to him?
First of all, his appearance and his comportment. You know, Ewan has a kind of elan that Halston needed to have. Ewan is incredibly skilled and a seasoned actor, and I really needed somebody who had the chops that could do this dialect, take this very, very unsympathetic character and make him sympathetic. And I've seen Ewan do this. You know, I thought the work he did in Fargo was amazing. And he also has you know, he never shies away from sexuality or difficult roles. And I needed somebody like him, you know, who was bold enough to do it.
And I think some of those scenes I think are so important to the character, in that it's not sometimes you see these biopics and sometimes the sexuality gets kind of scrubbed or moved off to the side completely, but in this case it really was, you know, an integral part of it. Why was that so important in terms of this series?
You know, I think sexuality is a part of human nature, and it's one of the ways that we define ourselves. And I think you know, Halston came up in a time when there was women's rights activism and gay rights activism, and it was very much a man of his time. You know, I think like the Victor Hugo character is more of a sexual outlaw and more out in the world. But I think it was important. It was important to me that we represented that side of him as well.
I love, in terms of the casting, I love also that you seem to draw from, you know, you have Ewan at the center, who's like this big Hollywood name, but at the same time you pull from the theater in terms of people like David Patu and Krista Rodriguez. What was the kind of the story behind their casting?
You know, I was really lucky in that I was given carte blanche for casting. And I was given the ability to really cast the people who were right for the roles. And because these were real life characters that you can search and research them, and some of them are very well known, they needed to resemble the people. I also needed people like Krista, who plays Liza Minnelli, who could sing it and dance it and inhabit that character. Physically, she's very similar to Liza. You know, she has great big eyes and she sings and dances. She's a real Broadway baby. David came in, and he's somebody that I wanted to work with for a long time, and just completely inhabited the Joe Eula character in a way that was so great. And Rebecca Diane, who plays Elsa Peretti, was again one of those people that walks in the room and you can't see anyone else. You know, where our search is over. And she just has the elegance and restraint and the fire that I needed for Elsa. And she also comes from, she's an artist in her own right. And she came from the world of modeling, and you know, she's an actress, but she came from the world of modeling and fashion. So I couldn't have asked for a better Elsa. And Gianfranco it was amazing. I said to the casting people who were bringing in, like, you're trying to cast a Venezuelan character who has a very particular accent, and they brought in a lot of different guys, but I'd say, like, no, that guy's Brazilian. That guy's, from Central America, and we need to find a Venezuelan guy. And Gianfranco showed up and was astounding. And I'm so proud of the work that he did. He absolutely stands up to Ewan McGregor. They had such great chemistry.
I just love that you can pick out the accents so clearly. I'm terrible with accents, so I'm like, wow.
That's part of my job.
This show, one of the things that I think stands out is that on some levels it's a very intimate story, but then on other levels it's a very huge kind of global story with all this kind of spectacle. So as a director, you have, like, say, like the Versailles show, that is this huge kind of, I have to imagine that sequence was incredibly important and challenging to put together.
Yeah, recreating the Palace of Versailles and the Marie Antoinette Theater in New York was a challenge. And, everybody pitched in to make it just the best it could be. It was incredible. Our production designer, Mark Ricker, really pieced together all these different locations. I think it's 4 different locations to create that whole sequence. And, I loved the scope of this story. I love the spectacle of it. These are people who lived for the image. They lived to create a silhouette. They lived to be seen. And so that's a great joy of it. And then what they're like when they're behind the scenes and when they're home alone, to me, is what makes it delicious and makes it art. Imagining what these people's lives were like when they all hung out together.
You've talked about how a lot of people originally said no to this, and then kind of Ryan Murphy came on board, and of course you've worked with him before. What is it that Ryan has that just seems to draw these creatives to him?
Ryan has an uncanny sense for story and an uncanny sense for what people are interested in. I've never quite experienced it before. I had the opportunity to sit in the writer's room with him, and he's really remarkable in his craft. And for me, I had a great experience working with him on the assassination of Gianni Versace. And it's one of the things that I've done that I'm most proud of. And then we built a rapport, and he entrusted me with this, with directing all 5 episodes, and hiring all the creatives, casting all the people, and he would weigh in and check in on me and offer and counsel me when I was struggling. But I think that's the reason people like to work with him. Kind of lets you fly, and then kind of just gently, as a producer, guides you.
Are you able to separate kind of the producer side from the director side? Are those 2 very different mindsets that you have to go into?
I like to think I can separate them, but if you talk to my line producer, they'd probably say not so much. What I've learned over the years is to fight for the things that I believe are important. And working as a producer on shows, I negotiate with directors a lot about what they can and can't have. So I know all their tricks. And it's very different being in the position where you're doing both at the same time. And I like to feel like I did a good job of it. This was very ambitious. It was very big, very expensive show, and I think it's all up on the screen.
So, are there other figures like Halston that you think um, need this kind of treatment, that need this kind of exposure, that have these stories that you'd like to explore and tell?
You know, there are other stories that I'm intrigued with, not necessarily in the fashion world, although the fashion world is such a fascinating world and such an important part of our culture. But it'll be hard to find another character who I think has had such a dramatic life. Completely invented himself, and then such a dramatic, ending to his career. He was sort of very much a man of his time, and I think we still are feeling the influence of Halston on our culture today, in the way people dress, in their fascination with branding, in the idea of branding yourself, and his approaches to marketing. He was incredibly forward thinking. And it'll be hard to find somebody else who had such a big impact and then such a dramatic end to his story.
It almost seems like you can almost draw a straight line from Halston to this whole kind of YouTube influencer sort of thing, where you yourself become the brand. You yourself are really the marketable thing.
Yeah, the difference is that Halston also had real, his work had real merit, and he was actually creating beautiful garments and objects to sell himself. Like he had the skill and ability to do it. But I do think of him as the first influencer, and also in a way the first person to be erased. He again, he's like this lightning rod, and his influence on the culture is vast.
Well, Dan Minahan, congratulations on the series. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned with interviews with more Emmy contenders throughout the season. Daniel Minahan, thank you so much.
Thank you.